Welcome back to the PolicyViz podcast. I'm your host, John Schwabish. On this week's episode of the show, we're going to learn how to create great, effective templates in PowerPoint with my guests, Julie Terberg and Echo Swinford. I've known Julie and Echo for several years now. First met them at the Presentation Summit, which is an annual conference held for folks who are working in the presentation field. Echo and Julie have the best, I'm not even saying it's arguably, it is the best book on how to build better templates in PowerPoint. And the first edition of the book was really hard to get. Unfortunately, I have a version of that book here somewhere buried in my office. But they now have a new edition of the book, which incorporates some of the new modules and features of the modern version of PowerPoint. So if you work for an organization where you and your colleagues are creating PowerPoint presentations, delivering PowerPoint presentations, maybe even creating documents or reports in PowerPoint, I really encourage you to listen to this episode, and I encourage you to check out their new book on PowerPoint templates. So here we go. Here's my discussion with Julie and Echo about creating better PowerPoint templates. All right, we're here, yet another podcast virtually. Great. Echo, Julie, how are you both? Great to see you again. I haven't seen you in
been quite a few years.
Since the before times. Yeah, it might have been New Orleans in the last presentations conference.
That was a while.
A long time ago.
Good to see you, John.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So congrats on the new book. Now I don't know how many people know this, but So I want you to sort of lay out what the story is here, because the first book is like a rare jewel at this point. Like getting a copy of the first edition is like holding on to gold, and now we have a new updated version. So tell me the story, or tell listeners the story of like how you went from the first book and now getting to the second book. I don't know, Julie, if you want to
sure. The first one we worked with a publisher, and we sold some books, but it is a very niche market, and so we're not going to sell thousands and thousands upon thousands for years. And so the publisher decided they weren't going to print anymore, right? So then the book became very expensive on the book market.
And market
on the presentation
someone was
black
trying
market,
to
right?
sell a copy of the book for $4,000 on Amazon, and I don't think they had any takers. But anyway, that was a long time ago, and so Echo and I have been waiting for a few developments with the software and changes in that impacted templates, and so that was the catalyst for this updated version.
So now we've got this updated version, and I want to ask about templates generally. So I've seen some people complain about templates that, there's lots of websites out there where you can download this template and this template, but your book focuses on building a custom entire template for your individual or organization. And some people argue that they take away this idea of creativity. So can you talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of having in this case, a PowerPoint template? And maybe, I don't know, Echo, if you want to start.
I'll start. So my opinion, and I think Julie will probably agree, is that a template is there to provide an infrastructure for you. Like what you want to do, it lets all, like people in your organization, it lets them create their content without a whole lot of effort, because you've got the font theme built in, you've got the color theme built in, and so things just work. But it also helps non-designers create consistency throughout a deck. And that's something that is difficult for them, because when they look at a blank slide, like most normal people like me, you look at a blank slide and it's intimidating. But, to someone like Julie, a designer, they know what to do with that. So that's what a template is for. It's not there to take care of every situation or anything like that. It's just really to give you that infrastructure so you don't have to do everything manually.
Folks who say that a good template can that a template curtails creativity, they really need to understand that even if you're working on a blank template in PowerPoint, it's still based on a template. It still has those ugly office colors and the Calibri fonts. And so anything you design on that blank template we've seen them all before. I can recognize the
Right.
office theme orange and blue, at a glance in HTML in hex value. But
Like a
Oh yeah.
map.
Yeah.
a template, if you're creative and you're working with the template, you can go beyond those basic layouts. And you can use the color theme and the font theme and the structure and design a new configuration that goes along with everything else. So everything's consistent. That's all a template really is developing that structure for design consistency.
Right. And the one thing I've learned from both of you many years ago was using not just the slide in PowerPoint. I know we're focused on PowerPoint, but this probably extends to most of these tools. Not just the white slide itself, but using the notes pane and using the gray area around it. So so when you build out these templates, or when a person builds out a template for their organization, can you talk a little bit about building in the instruction into sort of how to use it within the template itself? Yeah, Echo, go ahead.
Yeah, so what you're doing there when you're building in instructions, well, like you said, you're using all of the different places. But the thing is that PowerPoint doesn't give us a really good way to build in instructions for the users. So what we've done throughout the years is, honestly, we've hacked PowerPoint and we've just pushed it and used all the different features that we have available to add instructions wherever we can. Like, one of the easiest things to do is to customize the prompt text. But people don't realize that you can do that. And it does have limitations, but you can still get a lot of really good information in there for people. And it's just anything that you can do to help those users understand what kind of information.
A lot of folks at these big companies, hey, believe it or not, they don't use PowerPoint every day, right? They may, unlike the rest. So they may pull up this template, after a few weeks or a month or a couple months, and they need to refamiliarize themselves with the tools and how to use it. And anything that we can do in the template to make their job quicker and easier, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It just seems to me, I think you're both right on. It seems to me that a lot of people in whatever field it is, presentation design, data viz, whatever it is, sort of forget that, most people that we work with don't really care all that much. They're like, they just want it to kind of look good, right?
Yeah.
And make it easy as possible for me.
Yeah. And
no,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I got something.
Nothing.
Well, you said something, John, in the beginning about, there are all kinds of templates that you can download and things like that. And you're right. People just want stuff to look good. So they look at those templates and they download them. Those templates don't necessarily help you make your stuff look good in your branding, because it's all built off at the slide level. It's not got that infrastructure in there.
I've downloaded, I've purchased some, I've downloaded some, most of them. You're missing so many parts and pieces. A lot of them, they've stripped off the slide master. They don't have any fonts programmed in.
Yeah.
They're not saving you any time or doing you any good.
Yeah. It's just that it's just a one-off, right? It's like the one-off thing that I need.
Like a one-off thing. Yeah.
Right. No. But doesn't help you down the road the way having it inside the organization. So
and then they have, you're the data viz expert here. So then they have those charts that have, like, what are they? What do we call them? Julie hump graphs. Like, that doesn't work for anything. And like, how do you do that?
Have you ever seen the one with the trees instead of columns? The overlapping trees.
The trees. Yeah. Oh yeah. The trees, the like 3D bar charts that have no data. They're just decorative. They're just decorative, right?
Yeah. So you can download a bunch of decorative stuff, but does it really help you in your day to day and what you're doing? Right. When you're trying to create charts and Anyway, enough.
So no, I think that's right. Now I want to get back to that in a second, because I want to ask about. My sense is that a lot of people, at least that I talk to, when they start thinking about their template, they think about font and color. And they sort of get that. And then they think about, okay, so how am I going to do, like, get to the next step, or like do the template for like every type of slide, and they sort of get stuck there. So I want to ask, this is really a two-part question, I think, now, because of Echo, what you just said. So I guess the first question is, like, what's your recommendation for those folks who maybe get stuck aside from reading the book, obviously, like that would be the first thing is read the book. But aside from like what's the way that they can get over the hump? And then to this question of like not doing this, like downloading this one-off slide, like how do you think when you're working with clients on this, like return on investment on you're going to spend some time building the template and how much you're going to get out of it at the end of the day? So that's kind of a two-parter.
Oh,
So I don't know,
Echo,
Julie, if you want to start with
you reply
either
first,
of us.
please.
Honestly, John, I would just be happy if they would get the fonts and the colors right. That's all I need.
So,
It kills me.
so you know, a template isn't going to fix all presentation problems. It's not going to. And you can't address every single potential slide configuration in your template. Have you ever seen a template and you open up the layouts gallery and there's about 100 of them and you have to scroll through and then and you're also working with those 50, 60, 70 megabyte templates. And so no one can email any files among the company. So that's what happens when you try and address everybody's issue. You just can't, and you shouldn't. In fact, our book addresses this, talking about a small template in a larger supplemental slide library, right? But what a template should do is it should work for everyone who's going to use it. So what we recommend is you take a look at a whole bunch of recent presentations that are done by your audience, and you surface those common slide types. What types of slides are the people who are going to be using your new template using? That's what goes in your template. You need to do your homework first before you design, before you build anything. Do your homework and design the template for those people, not for you.
And have you found when you work with clients that people, once they sort of see the value of the template, it just like the adoption just sort of like picks up pretty quickly?
Yeah, it definitely does. I have a client right now who I was contacted to rebuild their template because their design agency gave them basically a not workable template. And one of the issues is that they built it and they did their designer-ish layouts is what I call them. So they're really cool. They have really cool quotes and they have stuff like this. This is an engineering firm, okay? So all the engineers have come to these people and said, where are our layouts? Because they had a really good template to start with. Julie actually built and designed and built the previous one that was from years and years ago. And they need to update it. Well, the agency took off with it and did crazy things. And the client has come back because the engineers are complaining because they don't have any layouts. That they didn't
take their audience in mind at all.
They just did them dirty. They did them dirty.
Right.
I mean, it's just, I think that's one of the big drawbacks when people are creating templates. They forget about who's going to be using them. They build a template for themselves, not for the end users and for the people.
And like you said, how many templates do we receive that are filled with that eye candy stuff? Seriously, John, how many quotes can you have in a presentation? Come
on. I think that's right. And I think it comes back to what people see on a lot of these, not that these sites are bad where you can download templates, not that they're bad. I'm just saying, you see these things are sort of eye catching and then you say, well, I'm going to put that in my thing. But like you said, like how many different ways you need to lay out a quote in a single deck. What about, I wanted to extend this conversation just a little bit because I was talking to a student yesterday, and one of the big things that they have to do is they do slide decks at their work, but the slide decks are primarily intended to be shared as documents, not as as a presentation. So that's sort of the way they go. So how do the templates work for those folks? Like, how do you think about that? And to be honest, I don't exactly know how this works, like why you would use PowerPoint as like a document creator, but fine, whatever works. Yeah,
a lot of our clients will request multiple templates, one for presentations and one for documents. Other clients will ask us to include a few custom layouts that are designed for that purpose. Text heavy, they're just going to take those slides and export a PDF and deliver that as a leave behind. And so you can include them in the template, or if you need more looks, distribute a second template that's for documents. Some of our clients don't do presentations. They only do proposals and documents and reports.
No, they do this as documents.
PowerPoint gives them way more flexibility than Word does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
What
they
you
don't
mean?
have access to
Hold
like,
lines together is not
yeah,
useful.
exactly.
Sorry,
But
Echo. Go ahead. Sorry.
sorry, I didn't mean to, but they don't have
Right.
access to InDesign necessarily. So they're using PowerPoint as their page layout tool. They don't have Publisher. I
Right.
don't even know if
No.
Microsoft makes Publisher anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, InDesign, does Quark exist? I mean, InDesign's the only thing I can even think of that's a
Right.
page layout tool anymore. And people don't have access to it. And the learning curve is big for a typical person who would be
Yeah.
using PowerPoint. So yeah, it's the de
Right.
facto page layout. We do
Yeah.
reporting templates like Julie was saying. We
Mhm.
do those all the time for our consulting firm clients,
Mm-hmm.
and I've done newsletter
Yep.
templates for a couple of my clients.
Proposal
And yeah,
templates.
because they can move stuff around more easily. Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
Right.
mm-hmm. And you see
And
them
so
up
you
in the
can
The other
literally
thing I do
learning
lay.
is
tools.
So
training. I do
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So let,
participant guides with, and then you take it into Acrobat and you add editable text fields for the audience so they don't have to print anything.
right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is a very specific question, but it's something that comes up. I get this question a lot. Um, so I'm gonna tap into the PowerPoint knowledge before we get back to templates. So I have a lot of people who they want to do a document, so they lay out their slide 8.5 by 11. Now when they
Mhm.
and then they're going to burn it out as a PDF. So some people will come to me and say, well, I've built in my 1-inch
Mhm.
margins in the slide itself
Sure.
before burning it out to a PDF. And some say, well, I don't need to do that because when I convert it, it's going to add the margins in, or when I print it, if they're printing it, it's going to build it in. So what's your approach to that?
I can tell you what I do.
Uh,
I set up the page
I
size
tell
for
Yeah,
you
eight
what
and a
I
half by
do.
11, and I export a PDF, and it's 100%
yeah.
8.5 by 11.
And do you build in the margins, the 1-inch margins in PowerPoint, or let
When you
the
say 1-inch
conversion
margins,
sort of handle
that sounds like it's for a specific purpose.
What?
The margins that I use are
Yeah, yeah,
specific to whatever document I'm creating, and they use
whatever.
guides. You don't
Gotcha.
you don't you're using
Right.
guides and placeholder positioning. You're not using. Don't think about
Mm-hmm.
margins like Word. PowerPoint's not going to push
Yeah.
everything inside of a set margin like Word can. So you have to set up your elements in
Right.
those. Yeah.
Yeah. Within the frame. Yeah.
So what I would say is, so a couple of things with setting up margins and pages. When you set up your page in PowerPoint, if you choose letter, US letter, it already adds an inch. It makes your page size an inch smaller all the way around.
On all
So you
sides.
have
Right.
to use a custom size and set up 8.5 by 11
Yep.
specifically to get that 8.5
Yeah.
by 11 file. So once you have that, then like Julie said, put your guides in to set your margins. But honestly, I would recommend exporting a PDF and looking at it to see, because there are different settings that you can put in your print settings and your PDF settings. And depending on how you're creating your PDF, it may add more margin than not. So
Mm-hmm.
run a test to see if it looks right to your eye.
So that leads me to another question. Do you when you're working with a client and you're building a template for them, or you're teaching them how to make templates, do you encourage them, or do you test with multiple people at the organization? Do you encourage them to test it? And like what does that look like? Are you like, here's the deck, go, here's the template, go make a deck? Or like, what does that
Go ahead,
process
Echo.
look like?
Well, yeah. So generally speaking, we build in a couple of weeks for testing in the timeline. So Julie will do design. We get our feedback. Whatever we build the template, and then when I build it, the first draft, it's solid. They could use it. They could roll it out. But I ask them to test with a small group. So they should pick, 5 or 10 people. They should probably have some people who are really super savvy, and they should probably have some people who are not, and then have them test that template, build slides with that template, see what works for them, see what doesn't. And then we'll sometimes give them a list of things to check specifically. Like make sure that when you add text here, like, do you want it to shrink the text? If you want that to behave differently, let us know. Does this color work for you on the background? That kind
Usually,
Gotcha.
I've found it's a little bit easier. Folks really think they know a lot about PowerPoint, but they don't. And so the last few clients, I've distributed the how-to guide that's a companion to the template, and maybe a template system with a big library. And it has instructions in
Okay.
there for how to get this from here to here, but also how to up level older presentations by copying content into the new template. If you miss a few of those
Yeah.
pieces during the
Yeah.
testing phase, all your feedback's going to be,
Mhm.
well, this doesn't work with my old slides. So you have to teach them how to do it right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've both been doing this for a while. Are you still seeing people moving from 4.3 to 16.9, or have we sort of like
Not so much.
kind of finally gotten to the widescreen and we're kind of there?
I think we're over the hump. I think we're at widescreen.
Over the hump. I saw one a couple days ago and I was like, really? We're still doing 4.3?
I do have a lot of clients who still do 4.3, and they are the ones who are doing reporting. They are printing. They are specifically still printing, physically printing. Now,
Okay.
most of them are creating
I see.
PDFs as well, but especially the financial firms, they are like, their heads are in that
Right.
4x3 space. And sometimes I
Right.
can't get them out of it. But a lot of them
Gotcha.
are also asking for a 16:9 option as well. I think they're going to find that moving back and forth really sucks, and they're eventually going to
Yeah.
settle on widescreen.
Yep.
Will be my guess.
Right.
That's my
Yeah.
guess. We'll see.
It would be interesting, you know, without the pandemic, if that would have accelerated even faster, right? Because it's almost like when you're on Zoom, it kind of almost doesn't matter because you can adjust your Zoom screen. You can still see it, but like, you know, when you're in the real world
Well,
and you're presenting, it's
except
all
you've got
widescreen
folks who
TVs
are
now.
using their iPads more and more, and those are 4x3. Some laptop screens are
Yeah, that's true
4x3.
too. Yeah.
So I think the
Right.
pandemic revealed that
Yeah.
we still have a
Yeah.
need for both now and then. But I don't see
Right.
any.
Yeah.
I think I've seen one 4x3 come across in the last year.
That's interesting about the iPad. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's true. That's really interesting.
It's funny because I can think of like
Okay.
4 or 5 clients I have right now who are doing 4x3 or have had in the last couple of months. But it's a lot of financial
Right.
and reporting. Yeah. We'll figure.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So kind of, but it's sort of a unique use case.
Yeah.
Okay. So specifically to templates, and I'm going to let you each answer, see if we get different answers. I should have had you write it down first. What's your number one rule or recommendation when it comes to not using, but creating the template? So if I'm the head designer at my firm, I'm creating the template. What's your number one rule? So Julie, you want to go first? Like, what's your number one rule?
Do not add or remove placeholders from any of the default layouts in PowerPoint. So when you go to the slide master view, those 9 layouts that show up first, don't add or remove any placeholders from those. If you need something that has an additional placeholder, or maybe you wanted to delete one or whatever, always go in and insert a brand new custom layout and add placeholders to that. You can have them match the look of your existing placeholders, but don't add or remove any from those default ones. It breaks the connection between existing templates and your new templates.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. All right, Echo, number one rule recommendation.
So I have 2. The first one is you should save as a template, an actual true template. So by that we mean save as POTX at least once while you're creating your template. That strips out those variants. So if you do change slide size, or if you click one of those by mistake, it won't override all of your custom formatting, because I've seen people just lose everything that they've worked on when you switch slide size. So you have to strip those variants, and saving as POTX does that. After you save the file as POTX, you can save it as a PPTX later and use the PPTX for distribution or whatever. But that save as POTX function breaks that connection, and you want to break that connection. So it's an important thing that gets overlooked because it just came into fruition.
Yeah, I think we
2013.
I think we put it in 36-point text in the book.
Like we repeated it every 3 pages or something. Like save as POTX. Just do it once. Like just trust me. Just do it once. But the other thing, honestly, is set up your font theme. People do not know to set up the font theme. And what you're doing when you do that, like they'll apply a font to the placeholders, but they won't set up the font theme. And what you're doing is you're setting up all of your users to create Frankindex at that point. Because your placeholders, when you type text, will use whatever you've formatted there, but everything else uses the font theme. So when you create a chart or a smart art or a table, you use the font theme. And so if they don't match, like people can't see the difference between those fonts. If you have Calibri as your font theme and you've put Arial on your placeholders, most people can't see that difference. Julie can see it at a glance, but I don't pay attention to it a lot of times, and so you'll get caught out with that, and you'll end up with all these mismatched
Well,
fonts.
and also
it
as
just
we've
does not
discovered
look
recently, some of those fonts
good.
are
But
nearly
here's the thing.
impossible to replace in charts. So you're just doing everyone a
Yes,
disservice.
especially the
So
Ivy
take a
chart.
few minutes
Yeah.
and set up the font theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. All right. So now I want to ask about PowerPoint specifically because it has the tool has evolved pretty dramatically over the last 5 years, I'd say probably. So I want to get your sense of your least favorite part of PowerPoint and your most favorite part of PowerPoint. So we'll go backwards this time. So we'll start with Echo. So your least and most favorite part of I don't know what I mean by part, to be honest. Like, I guess specific tool,
I
part,
know.
aspect.
My least
Yeah.
favorite thing, my least favorite thing about PowerPoint. I mean, okay, so I have to say, I love PowerPoint. There's so much good about it. I got to throw that out there. But there are so many like little things that just drive me batshit. I can't even. It's just some things just make me crazy. But honestly, the biggest thing and the biggest time suck, I think, are the charting and table tools. I think they suck. They suck really bad. I think the fact that we
Yeah.
cannot create our own custom styles for charts and tables is just, I just, oh my God, they need
Mhm.
love so bad.
Yeah.
It's just low hanging
Right.
fruit. I don't know why they haven't done anything with them. The tables are embarrassing. They're just embarrassing.
Yes, they are. They are embarrassing. Yeah. That is the best word to describe them. It's actually interesting now that I hadn't really thought about this, but it's the charting library in Illustrator is also like god
Oh,
awful. So like what like I don't
So
know. I don't know what to say about that, but
I
it's
when I
like
have to
this
work from
breakdown.
PowerPoint to Illustrator and InDesign, every chart is
Yeah.
manually manipulated so that it's exacting, brought into
Yeah.
Illustrator, converted for InDesign, and it's a lot more work. But
Right.
I can take advantage of chart styles for
Yeah.
some of that.
but we can't create an
So
actual chart
okay.
style that will travel with a template, and we can't like there's no one click like add direct labeling. Like what the hell,
Right.
Microsoft?
Yeah.
Come on, low
Right.
hanging fruit.
Right.
I can't even position those data labels
Yeah,
properly. I
I
mean, it's
know.
just
Yeah.
oh, it's so maddening. I can't even.
It's
It is
infuriating.
infuriating. That is a good word for it. It's
Yeah.
infuriating,
Yeah. It really
and
is.
it's
I mean, I will say it's gotten better. Like I
no.
was very much like, well, no, I was always up until maybe 3 years ago. I was like, I will never insert a chart directly in PowerPoint. I would always make it in Excel and then pipe it over because the PowerPoint Excel handoff was always
Oh
so bad.
yeah,
It just seems to have gotten like the handoff is better now.
I would
Um,
agree with that.
but it's still like all these other things you
Yeah.
can't
But honestly, but
control or
John, it
style.
doesn't matter whether you're doing it in PowerPoint or in Excel because quite frankly, the biggest difference I would say is that PowerPoint starts with dummy data. And that's actually one of the tips that I give
Yeah.
my students is if you don't know how a chart is how the data should be set up, do it in PowerPoint because it gives you the dummy data. So for example, tree map. I have
Yeah.
no idea what
Right.
Excel is looking for a tree map. And so if I create it in PowerPoint, I have dummy data. I'm like, oh, and then I can go to Excel and set it up that way if I need to. Or I can create it in PowerPoint using that dummy data because you can click the button and open the full Excel thing. So you have all
Yeah.
the Excel tools right there. Just people don't
Right.
know to do that. So I
Yeah.
don't care if I'm charting in PowerPoint or Excel, to be honest, because to me, it's really the
Right.
same. It's just that I don't have to add the
The
data.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there for
Yeah.
you.
That's a really good
Yeah.
idea though. Yeah. No, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
Julie,
least favorite,
least and most
the
favorite
text
parts of PowerPoint.
formatting tools from hell. They're
You don't like
no,
the
not that
drop
text
shadow and the
formatting.
outline and the
Line
bubble.
and
Well, those two,
the
yeah.
ancient dialogue boxes for line and paragraph spacing and bullet characters and numbering and
Oh,
all that. They're so
yeah.
bad and so old, and and they really don't help us at all with presentation text. They didn't even help in Word. They don't help in PowerPoint. That's my least favorite area of the program, and I have to use it every single day. So,
oh God, I have to throw
go
in
ahead.
one other. Oh, you go on, Jules. I'm sorry. I was thinking. I thought you were finished. Go ahead. All right. So one other for me related to templates specifically is the whole template ecosystem is what I will call it. I think that things like font themes and color themes, they're not real obvious to people. It's not obvious what's happening to them, but also it's really, really difficult to get to your custom template. If you don't want to use a Microsoft stock theme, you got to jump through some hoops. And IT can strip out all of that stuff. Your IT staff can strip that out and can push yours and all of that. It's really hard for them to do, and they don't all know how to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're a small, very small firm, you may not have someone doing that kind of thing. So it shouldn't be that hard. It should be so much more obvious and so much more easy.
I 100% agree with that. That is one of the biggest hiccups I have to getting people to even just to make a color palette in Excel and share it with their colleagues. Like you have to go like 7 layers deep into your Finder Explorer window to find that XML file. It's just well, I mean, it's beyond my skill set to know whether it's unnecessarily difficult, but it's definitely difficult.
So you asked also about our favorite part. Recently,
your favorite
last couple of years, the cloud fonts, Microsoft cloud fonts. As a designer, I mean, I've been waiting for this forever, and there's hundreds of new fonts, and so many of them will make beautiful presentation theme fonts. But the coolest thing is, more and more, I think all of my clients right now are in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, so they can use these cloud fonts in their files, and no one needs to embed them or install them. They are automatically downloaded from the cloud whenever someone opens up a document with these fonts. So anyway, seeing more and more global uptick on the M365 users, and so cloud fonts is probably my favorite new feature.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. And I think I just saw Nolan Hames posted a link to someone has the new guide.
Terberg is the author.
Oh, that's yours. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So I don't know if you all know this woman, Julie.
Yeah, it has.
And it's
like
what, like 300 pages?
All of the cloud fonts, and it's constantly updated as Microsoft adds new fonts to the service. I update the guide and post a new one. It's also linked from Microsoft's cloud font page. Right. So if you're on their page, it links to my site so you can access the guide that way. But it's on Design to Present on the publications page.
Okay. Yeah, I have it right here on my desktop. I will. I'll link to that so people can.
If they don't know what cloud fonts are, the site has an article explaining what you need to know and the caveats also. If you're going to have folks using Office versions, if you don't know what Office version they're on, you need to be aware of some of these issues.
Right. Echo, I don't think we got a chance of your favorite.
So I was thinking about this, and I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Designer, but it's another one of those those non-obvious things. Sometimes I really like being able to just, especially with my clients and stuff, they can just choose one of those Designer things, and you can up level your slide, and it's really good for one-off. My issue with it is it has some issues, and so it's sometimes hard to get back to the design, and people don't know how to use one of those Designer options for the whole file. And if you insert it in a new slide, like if you're creating a title slide with a new deck and you do a Designer thing, you choose a Designer look, it will apply to the whole deck, but it's not obvious that it's doing that. So I struggle with that obviousness and things like that. But on the positive side, if you construct your template correctly, it will work with Designer, and Designer will push the layouts that you are
in brand in your template.
So your users can so the users can select those in brand
select it.
on brand
that's great.
layouts. So I'm kind of, I got to give designer a shout out. They've done a nice job with it, I think, for the most part.
I mean, I feel the same way. I kind of like it, especially when it's quick and dirty. I don't like the fact that when you lay stuff out, like the background part of the slide is fixed. Like, it'll give you like the two photographs next to each other and they're nicely cropped and everything. And then the background is gray. It's like, well, I want it to be blue.
I believe
well,
you can copy those elements
to start over.
A new slide, and you could create your own background. There are ways to get around it, but I really like
your own version. But
you can select in the selection pane.
Yeah. So the designer's great for that quick, quick down and dirty. You've got, like I was telling Echo, you've got a series of 5 photos, right? And you need to get them arranged in a grid on a slide. Use designer. Bring them back into your own. Bring it back into your own deck.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I use it for all the time. Like, let it do the work for the cropping and layout and the arrangement work for you, and then then throw that stuff away and just use it on your own stuff. So before we go, you are both setting up LinkedIn Learning classes. Is that right for this year? So what are the classes on?
Mine is basic techniques for data visualization. So toning down color, how to highlight certain data points. I can't even talk, can I? how to highlight certain data points, different chart types. I think I'm going to talk about, some alternatives to pie charts, things like that.
Slide design makeovers.
That's great. Julie, what about yours?
Yep. Taking some boring, common slide types and turning them into something that's a little bit more appealing, visually appealing, and helping the non-designer get a little bit more creative with their stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll link to both your sites so people can check them out and look forward to the learning classes. And then I want to make sure I mentioned the Presentation Guild that you were both founding members of. And Echo, I think you are still teaching the boot camps, right?
I've been working on certifications for the last couple of years. And, Glenna Shaw was instrumental in getting our specialist level out there. And we launched that a couple of years ago. And then I think just in the last couple of weeks, we've launched the expert level. So I've been working on that. We'll teach a boot camp geared toward that.
Awesome.
In the next couple of weeks.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks to you both for coming on the show. Thanks for writing another version of the book. I'll see if I can sell my first edition for like $5,000.
If anybody has screenshots of that $4,000 thing, I need them because I didn't take a screenshot.
Thanks, John.
Thanks to you both. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for tuning in to this week's episode of the show. I hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned a lot. One last thing before I let you go, check out my new Winnow community. It's a new app where I send about 2 or 3 text messages a week with a great data visualization or a great technique or tip or strategy. I'm also sending out coupon codes for conferences that I'm speaking at or that others are speaking at that I have been sent. And so I'm sharing those with you. And you can get a free week to check it out, see if you want to receive those text messages. And then after that, it's only $5 a month. I send only 2 or 3 text messages. It goes right to your phone. You can get some great data viz content delivered right into your hand. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the show. Until next time, this has been the PolicyViz podcast. Thanks so much for listening.